Hello, today we're going to talk about conquering new markets and some tips that I have learned over my career when expanding my product into new countries and new regions. My name is Erin Nardo. I am a director of product management at Google. So, the first thing you always want to get started with is understanding the market and the product opportunity. The first thing to really think through is what problem are you solving in this market and what is the prevalence of that problem and some of the other factors that will be important to think about as you are making a decision if this is a good market for you. I like to start with market sizing. How common is the problem? Is this something that applies to the majority of users, a specific demographic, a specific set of users who have given characteristics? And how would they solve that problem if not with your problem? And how big is the gap between how they're doing it today and how this product would improve their experience in the future? Ideally, you are wanting to look for a sizable market, one that has a lot of users that is easiest to get into. Next up is to look at market requirements. So, understanding what you need to solve to make it work in this market. So, this is looking at your current capabilities and features, and then understanding what else does this market need or what might not apply to this market and what you would need to change. From there, it's also really important to think about the legal aspects. These can really be a gotcha. So, thinking about what do you need to have for your end user license agreement? What about terms of service? Are there certain things that you need to prepare for? For example, in Europe, consumers versus business users are treated differently. And so, what kind of user would your product have? And what are the legal implications of that? Are the regulations and guidelines that you need to be compliant with from that? This also gets into your compliance requirements. Many of us are familiar with GDPR and other things along those lines, but it's important to think about. For example, in the US, we have electronic expense reports with pictures of our receipts. That's perfectly acceptable for the IRS when they come and look at your company's taxes. However, if you go to another country like Japan or Mexico, there are different compliance rules that you need to have to be able to use an electronic receipt. So it's very important to do your due diligence around compliance. It also is very applicable if you're looking to get into a new vertical or a different vertical than you have been in historically. Government, financials, pharmaceuticals, and healthcare often have unique requirements around compliance that you'll need to address. And as many people today are introducing technology based products, you want to understand the infrastructure in your target market. For example, in the US, it's very easy to expect your users to have high speed internet, to be able to access a mobile device or even a computer. Now, if you were to look at bringing a new capability or new product to, let's say, rural Africa, you may not be able to count on those same things. You may need to factor in that people are only going to have a mobile device and that they may have slower internet speeds, and you need to accommodate that in your product before bringing it to market. So it's important to understand where you're going and how well your product will fit in that market and where the gaps are. As you are doing that, the next thing is to really think about how you're going to go to market. How are you going to target your audience? And this should be considered in parallel to developing your product. These requirements for go to market interplay with your product requirements and are important to think about together so that you can make the best decisions and understand how those pieces fit together. So, as soon as you start to understand your market requirements, I recommend thinking through your value props and messaging. What resonates in your market? And how are you going to speak to those target users? How you speak to somebody who uses your product, who is a parent versus not a parent, maybe lives in an urban center versus lives in a rural location, can vary. And the words may differ as well. Are there specific terms or acronyms that you use? Do those mean the same things in your target market? Are they recognizable and relevant? And that's important to think about. For example, in the past, I worked on an audit product. In the US, it's perfectly fine to talk about how audit applies to preventing fraud. If you were to bring that up in China, it's not acceptable. No one in China thinks about their employees committing fraud. And so instead, you need to speak about it as a compliance product, not a fraud prevention product. Another important aspect as you're thinking through the product and what someone values is the pricing and packaging. Are there capabilities that are considered more unique or more valuable in a given market? If so, you might be able to charge a premium for them in a given market, or it could impact your packaging of how you put those features and capabilities together at the given price points in order to optimize your reach in the market. It's also important to think about pricing sensitivity. What one market may be able to bear for a price point may not be the same in all markets, and you need to think through what is the price point at this market. Along with pricing and packaging is thinking through what form of payment will your user use to purchase your product. In the US, we see a lot of credit cards. Those are very common in Europe as well. However, you go to other parts of the world like India or Brazil, and credit card is not the typical form of payment. So you'll want to think through how you address the different currency and form of payment needs for your customers so you don't leave any of the market behind. Localization is also a really important factor to consider when you are bringing a product to a new market and considering the UX of your product, the supporting materials, the sales materials, your web page, even if you have any support videos, are also really important on that. So you want to make sure that it feels like this product is intended for this market and is localized for that. And so you can do this either using humans to be able to do some of those translation and unique materials, or there are also machine translation that often works well. And don't undercount the importance of this. I have seen customers in the UK where they might see the spelling of certain words, like organization, spelled how the US does with a Z versus an S, and they will feel like this product is just lifted and shifted into their market that you haven't necessarily been very intentional about going to market. So you want to think through that and make sure it feels unique to that market. Next is really building that marketing and awareness in that region. Where do people go for their news and information? How do they discover products? Some parts of the world still use Facebook heavily, so that could be an option. Other ones, you're going to need to think about what websites are people on and how do you place ads? Are there influencers? Are there local things like TV channels or radio, even that are good options for advertising your product? Because you want to go where your users are at so they can find you and then they can buy your product. And then once they have bought the product, you want to think about how you're going to service and support them. How are they going to get help if they have a problem? So, how will they reach you? Will it be via email, via chat? Will they be able to call you? How quickly should they be able to expect a reply from it? Is that in 24 hours, 48 hours? Is that only supported Monday through Friday? Do you have support on the weekends? Is it only during the day? So you want to think through that, as well as depending on what if they need to return the product, especially if it's some kind of physical product. How will that work for them to send in a return and get a replacement product? So you want to understand how you're going to be able to accommodate those. So then, now that you really understand how you are going to target your audience and what product you're bringing, you want to assess your costs, help the actual plan to go to market. And the final piece, when you know what product you're bringing to market and your target market, is you want to develop your entry plan. The first thing you need to do is to think about your product investment. So, based on those market requirements, what are the features and capabilities? What is it going to take to build those and to maintain those? Because once you build them, you need to be able to keep them current. So, with software, that often means bug fixes, remaining compliant to the market, and other things that are ongoing investments. And from that, there's implications for your roadmap. What does that mean to your existing market and customers? If you need to put in 50% of your roadmap capacity to enter a new market and support it for the first year, what opportunities are you losing? You may not be able to go into another market in that same time period. And how does it impact your current customers? How will you manage those customers and those existing markets where you may not be able to bring as many new capabilities and features to market or be able to respond as quickly? Is that something that's going to work for that market, or is this going to be a really expensive market for you? And once you understand from the product perspective, what else do you need to make this business go? Do you need sales on the ground, or are you going to be able to do this remotely? What is your support structure? What other marketing resources? Do you need to hire someone in market to be able to help you with the marketing, or a vendor to do maybe your press releases and publicity in that market? So you want to understand what the costs and types of resources you'll need there. And then once you understand all of those costs, you want to model out your market run rate. So what is it going to cost, as well as your break even point? So how will your sales look? And you want to do this from most likely, and I think a negative and an overly positive perspective, because the other thing to think about is if your business is not running as planned, let's say in sales, and is growing more slowly, what are the implications from your cost structure and your sustainability? As well as what if you take off in the market and you're really successful? What if you get a lot more customers? What if you need more capacity? How are you going to be able to handle that and be able to plan for funding and risk management of those things, both the positive and the negative types of risks? And finally, as part of that, what are the key metrics and leading indicators? So, of course, you're looking at sales and revenue generated and your costs, but you also want to think about some simple things, right? Like if you need to be able to sell a certain number to be able to make a certain profit, you need to think back into what is your marketing funnel. If you only close about a third of your deals, you need a marketing funnel that is at least 3x the size of that number you need to win. And so you might even need to have 5 or 6 times that. So, how are you going to be able to tell if you're getting enough new opportunities and pipeline in? What is your average discount rate? Are you discounting higher or lower? If you're using a trial experience, if you're not getting the amount of signups that you're anticipating, you're probably not going to get the conversion rate. So you want to be able to see when things are going well, when things are not, and early indicators that you might need to make a change as well. Once you have all of this information together, you can really start to put together that business plan. A thorough evaluation is really important to make sure you've thought through all of the factors in order to optimize the success of taking your product to an additional market.